Tired of the negativity? Looking for a shot of optimism? Well, I have an inspiring story to make you smile right after this. This episode of Misfits and Crackpots is brought to you by the Well-Crafted Story Workshop. Struggling to connect with your audience and attract new clients? Transform your speaking skills at the Well-Crafted Story Workshop with Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and yours truly, Dr. Danny Brissell. In just 2 days, master the art of crafting compelling speeches that convert listeners into clients. Whether in-person or virtual, you'll get personalized attention in an intimate group, learning not just from expert coaches, but from fellow entrepreneurs. Don't let another opportunity slip away. Get your free story blueprint today at wellcraftedstoryworkshop.com and turn your story into your most powerful business tool. Your success starts here. Visit wellcraftedstoryworkshop.com now. You're just a well-crafted story away from 7 figures.
Hello there, my friend, and welcome to Misfits and Crackpots, short, inspiring stories for busy people. I'm Dr. Danny Brissell. This is a podcast for those interested in extraordinary stories about ordinary people and companies. Consider it your dose of positivity and inspiration for the week. Haruki Murakami wrote, "When you come out of a storm, you won't be the same person that walked in. That's what the storm is all about." This week's success strategy: conquer your fears. Chile in the late 19th century was a rugged nation where opportunities for young girls from impoverished villages were severely limited by tradition and societal constraints. Born to a family steeped in hardship in the remote town of Vicuña, Lucila Godoy Alcagaya learned the values of humility, hard work, and keeping one's dreams closely guarded from a very tender age. Her early life was shaped by an environment that instilled in her both a profound respect for education and skepticism about her ability to rise above her circumstances. From her earliest years, fear was her constant companion. Fear of poverty gnawed at her soul as she watched her family struggle. The loss of her father, who deserted the family when Lucila was just 3 years old, instilled in her a fear of abandonment and a profound sense of vulnerability. Fear of illness lurked around every corner as she lived in an era before modern medicine. And perhaps most insidious of all, the fear of her own sexuality lay hidden inside of her at a time when such topics were taboo. Lucila's educational journey exemplified her patience and determination to overcome her fears from the outset. Channeling her curiosity about the wider world into voracious reading and studying, she excelled academically, despite the primitive conditions and the doubts of those around her. See, her ambitions extended far beyond what society expected of an impoverished young woman in those days. By the time she was 15, she took on the responsibility of supporting herself and her sick mother as a teacher's aide. During this time, she began writing poetry under a pen name. Some of her poems were published in local and national magazines and newspapers while still in her mid-teens. Her life took a tragic turn when she was only 17, falling deeply in love with a young railway worker named Romeo Ureta. Her romance with her Romeo was cut short when he committed suicide. The only item found on his body was a postcard from Lucila. This devastating experience left an indelible mark on Lucila's psyche, a wound that would never fully heal. Further compounding her grief, she later endured the tragic loss of a nephew who also took his own life. Amidst this profound sorrow, Lucila found solace in poetry. Writing became her method of facing the emotional tumult of her childhood, allowing her to process her experiences and fears through the rhythm and flow of verse. It was the heartbreaking death of her lover that inspired her to pen the poignant Sonetos de la Muerte, Sonnets of Death. 3 of these sonnets were published, earning Lucila national recognition and a prestigious poetry prize, verification of her ability to transform personal tragedy into literary brilliance. Upon establishing a poetic reputation and earning her degree, Lucila became a teacher. Her work as an educator exposed her to diverse cultures and environments that pushed her outside her comfort zone. With each new experience defying her fear, her perspective on the world and a woman's place in it expanded exponentially. Her classrooms became incubators for her ideas about education and social justice. And these experiences cultivated her patience to listen, learn, and understand diverse perspectives, skills crucial for her future path. Lucilla's foray into the male-dominated literary world was a quiet tour de force. While teaching and writing in Mexico in the early 1920s, she began exploring feminist philosophy and advocating for the rights of women and indigenous peoples. These were controversial stances at the time, but Lucilla was determined to use her voice to elevate those who had been marginalized and oppressed. It was not an easy path. Lucilla faced harsh criticism and even threats for her progressive views. But she refused to be silenced by her detractors or intimidated by the forces of traditionalism. Her fear of vulnerability was overshadowed by an inner strength and conviction that injustice must be confronted through passionate activism. Lucilla had developed a fervent passion for advocating for the disenfranchised. She understood the power of education to transform lives, particularly those of women and children who had been marginalized by society. Her writings began to reflect her advocacy, intertwining themes of social justice, equity, and the importance of education. Her reputation as both a poet and a reformer grew, and she found herself invited to participate in international educational conferences and literary symposiums. These opportunities allowed her to network with other intellectuals and activists from around the world, further broadening her horizons and fueling her advocacy work. In 1922, she was invited by the Mexican government to help reform their educational system. This invitation was a significant turning point in her career. In Mexico, she implemented innovative educational programs advocating for the importance of accessible education for all, especially for rural and indigenous communities. Her success in Mexico was widely recognized and solidified her reputation as a leading educational reformer in Latin America. Writer Margot Arce Vázquez said that for Lucilla, teaching was a calling to which she gave all her enthusiasm, freedom, and creative spirit that abhorred routine. Her extraordinary efforts as an educational advocate earned her the title Teacher of the Nation by the Chilean government. Indeed, everywhere she went, her very existence as a strong, independent woman challenged the status quo. In 1926, her collection of poems Desolación was published in New York to widespread critical acclaim. The vivid, visceral portrayal of pain, loss, and resilience resonated with readers across the Americas. This work established Lucilla as a literary force and cemented her reputation for crafting poetry that pulsed with emotional authenticity. Despite her professional successes, Lucilla continued to struggle with her personal fears and insecurities. However, each step forward in her career represented a victory over those internal battles. Her poetry remained a sanctuary where she could explore and confront her deepest fears, transforming them into sources of strength and inspiration. One of her most poignant works, the poem Fear, made a haunting statement about confronting the demons that sought to silence her spirit. She wrote, "We are always afraid. Fear is born in the soul and grows to monstrous size, crushing us and holding us inert until we subdue it with its own chain of hunger and silence, smashing it down among words." Through gutting first-person verses, she laid bare the internal battles required to shed the shackles of fear and give voice to one's truth. Her own journey towards self-actualization, despite the formidable odds, resonated through the stanzas. In the 1930s, Lucilla's career took yet another turn when she was appointed as a consul in various European and American cities. This diplomatic role expanded her influence and allowed her to advocate on a global stage. She used her position to speak out against social injustices, promote educational reforms, and highlight the importance of cultural exchange. She became a nomad, traveling the world and spreading her message like a latter-day Johnny Appleseed, except instead of planting orchards, she cultivated minds. From the classrooms of rural Chile to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., Lucilla courageously championed progressive ideals of social justice, education reform, and indigenous rights. Her diplomatic work was driven by a deep-seated belief in the power of education and literature to bridge cultural divides and foster mutual understanding. On the global stage, Lucilla advocated for universal education, indigenous rights, and an elevated role for the Americas. Her advocacy transcended boundaries. At her core, she championed the rights and dignity of all who lacked agency and visibility in societies that prized power over truth. She wanted to encourage all of those who lived in fear as she had. Perhaps her greatest fear that remained was not being able to effect meaningful change through her words and efforts. But Lucilla soldiered on, unwavering in her belief that an individual armed with conviction could move the world. She needn't have feared, as her contributions to literature and education did not go unnoticed. In 1945, she received the Nobel Prize in Literature, becoming the first Latin American of any gender to be honored with this prestigious award. The Nobel Committee recognized her work as an embodiment of her lyric poetry which, inspired by powerful emotions, has made her name a symbol of the idealistic aspirations of the entire Latin American world. Upon accepting the award, Lucilla remarked, "I am not a poet with a free voice." This was her humble acknowledgement that she had become the voice and vessel for the stories of so many others across Latin America bound by poverty, oppression, and the weight of injustice. In the final decades of her life, Lucilla traveled relentlessly, captivating audiences across the Americas and Europe with readings of her searing yet beautiful poetry. The little girl, once paralyzed by fear, had blossomed into a truth-teller without limits. And each fear she confronted was a step toward greater artistic and personal freedom. She personified the ability of one individual to confront and conquer fear through resilience, integrity, and an unwillingness to ever be silenced. Through quiet resoluteness in the face of fear, she became one of the most influential voices for human dignity, gender equity, and the mobilization of the meek in the 20th century. Lucilla Godoy Alcayaga chose her pen name as an homage to two of her favorite poets, Gabriel D'Annunzio and Frederic Mistral. The world would know her as Gabriela Mistral. See, friend, inspiration is all around us. You just have to look for it. Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another inspiring story about misfits and crackpots. Misfits and Crackpots is a production of Success Media, produced by Terrence Wishner. Sound effects by Alessandro Lucati, courtesy of Pixabay. Thank you for tuning in. If you love today's story, there's so much more to explore in the book Misfits and Crackpots by yours truly, Dr. Danny Brissell. Grab your copy now on Amazon and dive deeper into the extraordinary lives of those who dared to change the world. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with fellow misfits who love inspiring stories. See you next time.